That's a great question for firefighters, because a lot of us feel like we don't choose it, it chooses us. And that firefighting is something that just lives in your soul. It's a piece of who you are, trying to help people, with a little bit of an adrenaline with it. But there really is that piece of wanting to serve. And for me, being fire chief, I started as a new firefighter here in Arundel County. And I just continued to feel like I want to do more. How can I make a difference? How can I do more? And that's really what kind of pushed me up the ladder and brought me to this position, which I love.
Nobody really wakes up and thinks about becoming the Central Services Officer, but I did go to college and studied political science, and had a really wonderful internship opportunity with the Maryland House of Representatives. And so that led me to want to get a master's degree in public policy. And from there, I moved to Maryland and had a couple of different jobs with state government. But when I saw an opening in Anne Arundel County for a job in local government, I knew that's kind of where I really wanted to be, because everything everybody needs every day in society is at some point provided by somebody in local government.
I fell into this career by accident. After I graduated from law school, I practiced law, found out I didn't enjoy it, but I really wanted to dedicate myself to policy work. So I joined the University of Maryland Center for Health and Homeland Security and really fell in love with emergency management, and that's been my career ever since.
I started working for a boutique technology firm and really was exposed to operations, and I really loved that. And that's where I found that I had a home with organizational work. And then I moved to a nonprofit in child welfare, and then to Department of Social Services, and that was great. That was a really good home for me, and I really dug in. It's at that time that I decided to work on my doctorate degree in organizational psychology, which then everything made sense.
I was appointed in May of 2021, and for me it was a personal decision to enter into the field because I needed to get away from the numbers and the narratives and work with people. So I left the computer behind and hit the ground.
I chose my current career path as a registered nurse because I wanted to help people, because I wanted to make people feel better, and then I think being very interested in science at a very early age. Biology was one of my favorite subjects in school, and being able to turn that into a career has been really fulfilling.
So I began my career with the Prince George's County Police Department in 1990. I joined Session 76, the best session ever in the history of the Prince George's County Police Department. That was October 1990, and I graduated April 1991. In that time, probably the most high-profile case impacting the country was the incident involving Rodney King. So I joined at a very challenging time, much like today, a pivotal time in our history and in policing. And it was difficult in the sense back then that it received the coverage it received, and it felt similar to today, where everyone in the profession was tainted by one person's or a few people's actions. Didn't matter what patch or badge you wore. Community didn't see us in the highest regard at that time. I spent the 23 years of my youth with the Prince George's County Police Department. I elevated in rank from police officer to my final rank was that of a major. I held various commands throughout Prince George's County in some of the more challenging communities and some of the not so challenging communities. It was a very good career. And if I had to do it all over again, I'd do it the same.
My path in public health has been a little non-traditional in the sense that I started doing consulting work. So that means that I was helping other people do public health with helping them write out their standard operating procedures and helping them improve their processes, but still like learning so much about it because you have to understand what doesn't work and what does work well. So that was really exciting for me. But on that journey, after consulting, I actually worked for some hospitals. I've worked at an insurance company, and I even took a break from public health for a while to try to change the world and taught English for a couple of years.
I think I wasn't ever sure what my next steps would look like, and I just kind of allowed life to guide me to where I needed to be, and I think that it was great when I came here. I was in that role for about a year before the county executive did ask me to become the chief of staff in his office, and we've been doing that, and it's a lot of fun.
I think for central services, it is a bit hard for us to feel like we are directly impacting citizens. We are one step removed from the first responders. We're one step removed from the nurses that work in the Department of Health. We're one step removed from everyone in county government. We provide the building that they work out of. We make sure that they've got gloves or other safety equipment. We make sure the police officers have a car and that it works when they need it to. We make sure the fire trucks work and that they've had their safety checks done on them and that the systems are ready to go. We're behind the parks and recreation staff, or the recreation and park staff, when they're out in the field providing services that make life, quality life here in Anne Arundel County. So it can be a bit hard sometimes to remember that we aren't going to get the credit or the accolades, or we're not on the front line, but everything that we're doing is allowing those frontline people to be able to do their jobs every day.
We're a medical department. That's what we do, and our calling of doing our regular EMS was increased so much during the pandemic. I would say we were equally head to head with public health and what the health department was doing and trying to support them. It really shaped us into, we truly do and serve in a way that what our community asked for, we try to provide. So what they asked for was more help with the pandemic, more trips to the hospital, vaccinations, more PPE. People got to understand and see what we do on a greater scale and really had intimate knowledge of what it means to have an incredible fire and EMS department, serving them and their community.
The mission of our department is to build stronger, safer, more self-sufficient families, children, and adults, right? And so all the work that we do here at the department, it really is about helping families to be their best selves. And that includes women, children, as well as older adults, and ultimately communities, right? So the work that we do really moves people from a very vulnerable place to a place where they're able to be their best selves and live out their best lives. And that's the work that we do, and that's the work that I love to do.
Obviously, healing as a healthcare organization is a big part of why we do what we do, right? Healing individuals, healing the community, healing the environment. So just looking at whole person care and what we can be doing to provide the most both healing environment and services to really help people live their best life.
So the chief of staff role is an interesting role, and I think it looks differently in a lot of different places. So depending on the organization, depending on the principal and what the needs are, depending on the person's skill set. And so for me, this role, I really feel that my work in health and human services, the collaborations that I've been able to work on with our partners, has helped me with our response to COVID and our recovery.
I think the most rewarding is being able to mentor other women. Like, I don't really see myself as a natural mentor. People always say, hey, Carnitra, can you mentor me? Can you tell me how you got where you got? I just had literally about 30 minutes ago, it was one of our young workers, and she just came up to see where a fax was, and she saw me. She was like, hey, how are you? And she was like, can I ask you a question? How long did it take you to become a director? And I was like, oh, and that's how I told her my story. And then she said, where did you start? I was like, as a caseworker. And so it's just being able to implant into young people their possibility of being a leader and to give them that hope that you too can do this. I'm just a girl from Baltimore. That's what I always tell people. I'm just a girl from Baltimore. And so it's just about being able to connect with other people, connect with younger women, and give them that hope, give them that reassurance, and help them to steer their career paths.
I think one of the most rewarding things is I do think people look at you different. And I think it comes from seeing young female firefighters that, whether they knew it or not, they realized at that moment they hadn't seen somebody in that role. When I was coming on the job and when I was younger and, told my uncles and my cousin and my mom I wanted to be a firefighter, it was like, yeah, right? Like, okay. And I had never seen a female firefighter. My uncle, my cousin, they were both firefighters, and they never told me I couldn't. I would go to the fire station and visit them. I never saw a woman at the fire station. So I think part of it is the fact of seeing someone is really important because it makes it real. But then nobody ever told me no. So I didn't know that no was an option. And that has really been a big piece of my career. There are still things that I find myself doing that after the fact, people will look at me and go, I can't believe you did that. And I was like, I didn't know it was a big deal, or, I didn't know no was an option. Like, why wouldn't you just ask and try? So I think that's interesting. And then there's these little nuances about being a woman in the fire service, little tiny details that we can help correct or change that really make things easier and better for future generation of women firefighters. And I think if I was a man in that role, I would never notice those details that could really be helpful. So really the bottom line is it's always in the details. It's in the small things that make people feel important and feel heard and feel seen. So whether that's correcting a uniform garment that really fits women firefighters just as well as it fits men's firefighters, or a simple task of when I got here, we allowed women to wear ponytails and not just a bun, or allowed to have a French braid and not just a really tight bobby pinned bun. Some of those things that just make you feel like you more in a day was really important.
I never, growing up or even early on in my career, set my sights that high. The highest I anticipated, elevating to was a captain. And I fulfilled that desire or that goal. But to actually continue knowing, what potentially I would be sacrificing or giving up in order to rise to this level, it was a lot. I'm proud, but there's also sacrifice involved. I don't have any biological children. When I pass, as we all will, my legacy will be what I created and not necessarily, having a child to carry on my legacy. I think about little things like that. But I also think about what this role and this position mean to young ladies and other women who not necessarily are in this profession, but are aspiring to reach their goals, whatever that may be for them. I know that not just the work, but the role is meaningful for them as well.
There's not a lot of women leaders in emergency management, so I'm so excited to pave the way for future leaders. I have great young women on staff, and just to be an example of that, I always tell them, in 20 plus years, you guys will be leaders, and I'm so excited to see that.
A value of being a woman in this role is to be able to tap into that feminine energy, of being empathetic and understanding, but I think especially during COVID, being a Black woman, so that empathy, me looking at the data and understanding that the data points were not just data points, they were humans.
I'm a mom. I am a coach. I am very active in the community, so I can relate to our users because I'm one of them.
So I think the hardest part in this is that because I never had a plan for where I ended up landing. Oh, wow. I don't know that moving into politics and in a appointed position was really ever on my plan of to-dos. And so, one, really embracing that that's where I am and that's what I'm doing, and that there are some dynamics in working in an appointed position that are challenging, that stretch you a great deal. And then the opportunity, once you're there, to see how you can impact so much. And in local government, you know, there's a really quick return on the impact that you can have on communities.
Where most people in this line of work, particularly here at the health department, do it because we hope that we can make a difference, right? And our goal is to really make sure that other people can see that it's possible, right? It's possible to turn the needle or bend the curve on things, and we can change health disparities.
I've definitely been mistaken for my own assistant. People will call here looking for the fire chief and ask when he's going to be in, and you know, he is not coming in because she is here, and you know, they think I'm the assistant, and I don't think a lot of those things are intentionally negative. I just think people are just used to one thing, and you know, our job is to make people used to everything. You know, comfort is what it is, and that's built on tradition. And our fire service is traditionally male, and I'm very proud of the men that work here, along with the women. So I don't take that as a negative. I take it as a really great opportunity, one, to have a good laugh.
Again, as I've said, I've been very lucky. I've been given some opportunities to lead, and then I've been able to take advantage of those opportunities and do well in the roles. I am always surprised when people look at me or come to me and say, how do you do it? You have such a big agency. And I find that a little odd because I don't think they say that to men in similarly sized agencies or with the kind of impact that the Office of Central Services has.
There are several instances throughout one's career, especially in this profession. We're tested. We get pushed to our limits. And, you know, during those challenging times is when we rise to the occasion and don't succumb, don't fall, we don't quit. As challenging as things have been throughout my career, this moment, these moments, these last few years have been extremely challenging, but if folks like me or any of my peers or any of our officers get so frustrated where we decide, you know, I've had enough, you know, who will answer the call? Really, who will answer the call? Who will be present to help folks? And it's just important during our most critical times that, you know, we stay the course and understand that this too shall pass.
This is a male-dominated field. I have walked into many meetings, many offices where I am the only female. Also, being a woman of color, that has sometimes made me feel isolated, not being heard. And so I've had to struggle against that for many, many years, and I still struggle against that. And talking to other leaders, both male and female, especially of color, even though we're in a leadership position, we still have a lot to prove, and we understand the importance of where we are now for the future generations.
I think that, you know, one barrier is that especially for my dad's side of the family, I am one of the first people to go to college and graduate and then to have an advanced degree. So I'm in a unique position with like that responsibility, not just like trying to prove myself. And a lot of people of color experience imposter syndrome, being like questioning if you deserve to be there. And so like working through that and like believing in myself. And while I may not have a family member that relates to what I'm going through, you know, just working on my confidence and knowing that, you know, I've worked here, I believe in myself, and I can do it, I think has been something to overcome. It's just like I have earned the right to be here.
My mother. I love my mother, and I don't hesitate to tell folks I love my mother. That woman raised 7 children with the help of my grandmother and my aunts. After she and my father divorced, she went from being a homemaker to having to work to provide for her children. And she always encouraged us to pursue our dreams. If we had a question and we asked, hey, Mom, what's this or what's that? Back then, we didn't have the internet, so it was go look it up in the encyclopedia or go look it up in the dictionary. And we had all that stuff in the house. But she always encouraged education, to give your best in school. Not that we always did our best, but she always pushed us, to excel. Education is one thing no one can take from you, and it's a key.
My number one all-time role model is my mom, right? No one else stands close to being a role model than she was. Now, she's not in human services. She was always in banking. And so she was always like a leader in her industry. And so a real role model of what it means to work your way from one position to another position until you got to a place in your career where you were a leader.
Oh, there's so many. You know what I find the greatest inspiration from is somebody like, let's go back to my Rise Up coffee. I'll be in line for coffee and there'll be somebody talking in there to somebody else, and they're talking about, I got to go pick up my 3 kids and I'm working on my bachelor's degree at night and my husband's away on a military deployment. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like this one woman is doing all of these things. And to me, that's inspirational, because I'm like, well, stop complaining about X, Y, or Z. Don't complain about this, Trisha. That's not a big deal. It's kind of these unknown little pieces of how everybody lives their life every day.
My father, the philosophy I talked about self-care, about making sure you take care of your family, that comes from him.
My godparents, they're also my great aunt and uncle. They have been married for 59 years. So they are one of my role models in the sense that they have worked so hard. Like, they're retired teachers, like really great parents, but have just been a really consistent presence in my life of love and stability and advice, and what they model for I even get emotional, what they model for each other, how they take care of each other, I just think is such a good value, and has helped me for my marriage, even to be anyone can do this, 59 years.
There's not a lot of people that will take time to really spend time to talk to you and to help you grow and understand. And the women who were in my life, former bosses, other colleagues who I've worked with, are just incredible women, and really understood the importance of being able to be mentors and be able to be colleagues and friends, so that you don't feel alone when you're growing. I would say to them to find a mentor, to remember that you need people to help you, and oftentimes we kind of limit it to who is around us, and sometimes it's really beneficial to have someone that's not in your day-to-day, because you can get away and get a different perspective from them that you wouldn't necessarily have with people that you have day-to-day.
I would say don't do anything just because you want to break a glass ceiling. That's the wrong reason. For me, I feel like I really wanted this role. I really wanted to help and to do something. And the fact that it ended up breaking a glass ceiling is, it's amazing, because then other people know it can happen. But I certainly don't want that to be the legacy of, my time here and what I got to do. So I would say you really have to do something that you're passionate about and that you love. And in the meantime, if you happen to get to that glass ceiling and you create an opening of a new barrier for other young women, then our job is to not just crack it open or just to crack the glass. Our job is to bust it wide open and make sure that we're providing a path that leads multiple women down. You know, if I'm the only female fire chief in Anne Arundel County, then I probably haven't done my job. There needs to be more after me. So I would say let's not just crack anything open, you know, let's break it down and push that door wide open for many more to come through.
It's tough. Stay the course. Support one another. So many times I've experienced personally, and I've heard other women share their stories of sisterhood, no matter your race, but sisterhood, wishing that we supported one another so much more. It gets to be a little competitive. And what folks, sometimes I think young ladies, we miss the mark here is if you accomplish it, we accomplish it. And we can accomplish it together.
As I moved from position to position, as I got into higher positions, I was scared. I was uncertain. But once I got in it, understanding that it takes time to learn, not everything's going to go perfectly the first time, but learning from your experiences and moving forward is such a key factor in this.
My advice would be to be your authentic self. There is no one who can be you but you. And never feel like you have to show up differently than who you are.
I would tell women and girls today to just continue to believe in themselves, to work hard, but play harder.
Don't give up. Don't let them get you down. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Just put your head down and keep going. It's really important to be true to who you are and remember that at the end of the day, we have a job to do, and it's important to do it as best as you can, and the ceilings will break on their own if you just keep going.